GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond-producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109-carat diamond, recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior, with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rafe Mair, former BC Cabinet Minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. Welcome back to the show, Rafe.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
Well, the #1 rated show last night on television, no doubt about that. I think it was Monday Night Football. No, it wasn't. It was Donald and Hillary going nose to nose. What was your impression of the debate?
Well, I think, first of all, Jim, a caveat. You've got to be very careful giving your impressions when you're a Canadian, not just a Canadian, but you're living in a certain milieu. You're kind of middle class. You're okay with life, etc. And you watch that debate, and if you take it out of context, I would say that Hillary mopped the floor with him. He was everything that people thought that he was, if not worse. He shook his head all the time. He wouldn't disclose his income tax. I mean, those sort of things hit. And when he said, when Hillary said to him, you haven't paid any income tax, and he said something like, well, that's because I'm smart. I mean, those are terrible things. You and I watch that and we think, oh my God. But you've got to remember, we're not the ones voting. I don't know how many voters they have, probably 250 million people, whatever it is. A whole pile of those people don't really care. They're just mad at the establishment. They're the people that voted down Brexit in the United Kingdom. They're the people that are really peed off at everything that's happening. They're the old sort of middle class that has felt that they've been lied to by the establishment, and they've now got themselves into all sorts of pickles they don't like. They've now become environmentalists, where they wouldn't have done that in a million years, 5 or 10 years ago. There's a different wave of people out there, and for sake of convenience, I call it the Brexit folks. They're just really pissed off. And those people are for Trump, no matter what he says or what he does. And he can make the most outrageous statements, that they know they're outrageous, but they don't care. All they want him to do is to beat up on the people that they don't like. Now, I think the question is, how many of those are there? Because those who aren't that way obviously are going to be for Hillary. I mean, she's so much more capable a candidate, so much better a candidate than Trump. It's beyond belief. However, that may not be what the real criterion is when you're judging these things. I hope it turns out that way. But I've got a feeling that Trump is appealing to people that are going to stay with him, and they're going to be trouble in the election as long as Hillary, I suppose, stays the course and doesn't get into trouble. That's an awful lot to ask for any presidential candidate between here and what is it, November the 8th. So it's going to be tough. I actually won it. She was clearly the better candidate, but then again, I'm not voting, you're not voting, and our sort isn't voting.
They had a running fact checker going on during the debate, and Hillary did fudge some facts, but about half of what Trump said was found to be untrue.
Oh, I don't think there's any. I'm surprised it's that high that were true. He doesn't care. He just comes out with anything that's in his head that he thinks is going to do a job. He argues like he was at a cocktail party where everybody had a little too much to drink and weren't going to pay a hell of a lot of attention to what he said. He just carries on. And, if you, like, you get back to what I said a little earlier, if you go into this thing looking at it based on common sense and logic and all the political experience we have as Canadians and even watching American elections, if you look at it that way, I mean, Hillary Clinton just mopped the floor. I mean, you'd think he would have turned tail and run, never to show up again. But as I say, Jim, it's a different time right now. I guess every election has its own time. But this one is very, very different. There are just a lot of people out there angry. Start off with a lot of white people are angry. at Hillary Clinton's liberalism. They're mad at Obama just because he's black, so that's a way to get that out. They're ashamed of themselves for having got the country into the shape it was in that Obama had to bail them out of. So that's a matter of that you don't say I'm sorry. What you do there is you get mad at the person that saved you. You got those people. You got people that are underpaid. They've got jobs, but they know they're not getting paid well. You got people that take a look at the tremendous difference between the wages of the white collar and the blue collar worker that have expanded, as you know, extensively over the last 10, 15 years. All of these people are angry, and when you say to them, well, I'm going to come along and I'm going to do this, that, or the other thing, and you're Hillary Clinton, they say, well, it's more of the same. We don't need that. We heard that from you before. We heard that from your husband. We heard that from all kinds of people. No, we want to have somebody that's really going to stir things up. And the strange thing is, too, and I mentioned this in an article I wrote a couple of weeks ago, Trump could probably buy the Clintons 100, 200, 1,000 times over. And yet Clinton is looked upon as the person that has beaten the system for money, that has taken money that didn't belong to her, and all this sort of stuff, like going into the White House and writing books and making money off her public service. Now, here's a guy that's lied and cheated, and we heard last night that he had fired people all over the place. He hadn't paid his bills, and people are paying no attention to that. But they look at Hillary Clinton and say, you bitch, you married that guy, became the president's wife, and then you became a senator, and then you wrote a bunch of books, you made all kinds of money, you and your hubby got all kinds of dough out of public service, we don't like you. So it's a strange, strange election to try to call. Again, I want to go back to the beginning. If Rafe Mair were calling this thing the way he thought, traditionally, it was like an election of 4 years ago, 8 years ago, etc., I would say, well, it's no contest. But it isn't that kind of an election, and there's a lot of anger down there, and we're just going to have to see how it plays out.
Well, right now, they're virtually tied in the polls, but 20% of Americans have yet to decide who they're going to vote for.
Well, and also, I hate to say it, but it's still early times. You don't really get down to the serious polling, I don't think, until you get within about 2 weeks to a week of the election, and people are really concentrating, and they're now talking it up, and they've got their minds closer to being made up. So I think you're right on that. I don't trust polls until they get very close to the election day, and when it gets sort of down to the nut cutting, and people are really now aware of what's going on. Well, they're more likely to have their minds made up. Nowadays, though, you never can tell when people are telling the truth either. But leaving that aside, I think the polls right now, if I were Hillary, they'd worry me, but they wouldn't panic me. I think to myself, well, if I carry on as I have been lately, that should change and Trump should hang himself. However, again, I go back to what I've said all along. Who knows? The worse Trump seems to get, the more popular he seems to get.
And Hillary has this Napoleonic complex where she considers it her right to be president. I mean, that's very evident.
Well, I think that's one of the big problems she's got going. She's been at it too long now. Her sequence of events from First Lady through to Senator through to Secretary of State make it appear to her, I'm sure, that this is a logical progression that takes her into the White House. And I think you're right. She's got I have a sort of a sublime right to win. It's just something that's in the cards, and God's with me. And that's a very dangerous thing to carry into any kind of a political contest, unless you're somebody like Franklin Roosevelt. But even he, you've got to always be prepared for the worst, and you've got to always think in the back of your mind, if I'm not careful, this can happen, that can happen. And I think that she's lost a little bit. I think you picked your finger on it. A little bit of the defense mechanism that goes with most candidates who worry about things that Hillary just doesn't seem to be concerned about. And, she brushes off these 33,000 emails. I don't know how serious that all is in the real world, Jim, but I think I'd have a little better answer than the one that she's giving. I would not only say it was my fault, I think I would also try to explain to people, look, nothing happened. I didn't do anything wrong. No consequences flowed from this. It was a stupid thing to do. Should never have done it. But, there was no secrets leaked or any of that sort of thing, because that's what Trump is driving at. And if she doesn't answer it, he's going to answer it for her. And he's going to have her, having given all the secrets of the United States Army, Air Force, etc., to the Russians and everybody else in the world by the time he's finished, because that's the way he works. She's got to know that, and she's got to have a straight answer for that. If she doesn't have a straight answer, well, I guess she just has to sail along and hope for the best. But assuming she does, she's got to start coming clean with it.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rafe Mair. Rafe, do we put too much weight on political debates going into elections?
Oh, I think so. They're not debates really anyway. As you saw last night, there was nothing close to a debate. Can you imagine that sort of behavior at Oxford or Cambridge or any of the good universities, Harvard, that are putting on a proper debate? I mean, they'd both have picked up and thrown out in their ear. So that you don't really have a debate. You've got just a political extravaganza and see who can make the most brownie points by saying something that's going to look good, and people are going to forget if it's bad and remember if it's good. And you're in the hands of the moderator. I know that people all thought the moderator was great last night. I did up to a point. I thought that being black, he was clearly going after Trump on that issue, trying to goad him. But by and large, it was okay. But you're subject to that, and they're not really debates. But they do give you an opportunity to see what a person is like under fire, and I suppose that's a good thing to know when you're electing the strongest person in the most powerful person in the world. But in terms of actually getting issues out, I defy you, Jim, and you can defy me the same way, to think of 4 or 5 issues that were really talked through last night that I feel my knowledge has been advanced because I listened to the debate. I mean, that just did not happen, and I don't suppose it's supposed to happen, but that distinguishes it from a proper debate.
Well, for Trump, it was a big step forward for him not to call Hillary fat, stupid, and ugly.
Well, he's got 2 more chances to do that, I guess. But well, that's right. But the funny thing is, I go back to what I said, Jim. I'm not sure that hurts as much as it should. That should get you thrown out of the game most of the time, but he just is appealing to people who don't care about that. As a matter of fact, he's actually, I think, appealing to people that if he said that, they would tut, they'd scream blue bloody murder, they'd yell out their post, did you hear what that man said? What a terrible man, and then vote for him, because he's hitting Hillary. It's not they don't like Hillary as much, although she's not particularly attractive to a lot of people, but he's hitting that establishment that they all hate so much, and they don't know why they hate it, but they're afraid. All sorts of things are happening around them. They're not making any more money than they used to, and other people are, and they're afraid, and they don't see the establishment as being the answer, but being the problem. So as long as he kicks hell out of Hillary, that's all they care. Now, I'm going to be taken to, people think, well, I believe that. No, I don't. I think the establishment's got a lot to answer for. They behaved very, very badly over the last 20, 25 years, and they profited where they shouldn't, all the rest of it. But not enough to put the entire world at risk, and not enough to put a guy like Trump in. If the establishment has to be dealt with in the United States, it's got to be by somebody other than this clown. However, he's the only clown available, and that's the problem. There's only 2 people you can go for, and if the one that you dislike the least is the clown, well, there you are. You've got a clown for president, and it's pretty scary.
Well, no one believed that they would elect Ronald Reagan. No one believed that they would re-elect W, and yet they did.
Well, those are good lessons from that. They've now got the Republicans who've got Ronald Reagan as some kind of a hero. I've never been quite able to understand that. I think that the person who equated him as the amiable dunce had him about right, but the Republicans have built him up as saving the world and all the rest of it, so he's now a hero. Now, W, I just, for the life of me, and maybe Jim, we're thinking as we go along here, maybe that started to tell us the story that things have changed, that people were prepared to vote in the obvious incompetent rather than put somebody in there that they disliked even more. And that may be what's happening here, that he may be the logical successor to W, who should have been thrown out in his past, but wasn't, and won, half decently. So, you may be right that the days of the competence having the edge in the presidential election may be over.
Americans also don't seem to be very proud of brains. They like to make fun of the smart kid at school. Maybe they like to make fun of the smart kid who's running for president.
Well, I think there's always something of that, It goes back to Adlai Stevenson, who ran against Eisenhower in 1952, and somebody said, well, Mr. Stevenson, you're going to get all of the intelligent vote in the United States. He said, that's not enough. I need 50%. And, he had it right. I guess it was Churchill said, if you want to know what the average voter is like, spend 5 minutes talking to him. And there is a lot of that in there. And we're not electing geniuses by having geniuses vote, and nor should we. I mean, that would be an elitism that would the downsides would far outweigh any good that may come of it. But we have to remember that's what we're dealing with. We're not having a bunch of brain rocket scientists going to the polls in November. We've got ordinary everyday people with ordinary everyday problems, and to them, the solution is the one that makes them better off. Not the world better off, or the state, or the country, or whatever. Whatever hits their pocketbook best, that's the hero, and that's the person to elect it. So when the average person goes in now, I say average person, I withdraw that, but when a lot of people go into the polls now in the United States, they're thinking to themselves, well, damn it, these guys, they're responsible for my wife and me not being able to do this, and worrying about our future, not being able to educate our kids. The guy down the block, he got lots of raises. He went along because he's a white-collar worker. I've been working my ass off all these years, and I'm making less in reality now than I was then. And who's at fault? The people that now want me to vote them back in so we can have more of the same. So he's not thinking about World War III or all of those other things. He's thinking of, or she is, of the pocketbook and who's responsible for it not being better, and whoever looks like might make it a little bit better has got an advantage over the other one. And it doesn't get down to rocket science. It's not as if you're going into the polling booth and having a choice of 4 or 5 different people, as we often do here. You've got 2. And, well, you've got a couple of also-rans, but you've only got 2 real possibilities. And so the better of the 2 is the one that's going to get, the more appealing of the 2, I should say, is the one that's going to get the votes, not necessarily the better of the 2.
Something that Canada has that the U.S. doesn't is royal visits. What's your impression of the royals visiting British Columbia for the first time?
Well, this is a very attractive couple. I have watched royalties for a long, long time, and I don't in any way mean to demean any of the royal women. There have been a lot of very attractive ones, but this Kate Middleton is something else again. She's really a good-looking lady, and he's a nice-looking guy, and he gives off an aura of being a pretty good guy. And how much better can it be than to have 2 little kids with you? So I think that, those things are always very attractive to people. However, I think in this particular case, I understand Stuart Phillip very, very well. They're being used by Trudeau and Clark to burnish their own image rather than come here and be part of a nice, harmless ceremony. And that's what Phillip saw. And I think he's absolutely right. And I think that's unfair to royalty when that happens. It happened, the most famous time it happened, I suppose, and I was alive and well, was May of 1939 when they trotted out King George and Queen Elizabeth in anticipation of the war that everybody knew was about to come to sort of rally the troops. And when they're used for political purposes like that, I really don't like it very much. But when they come out just to sort of show the flag and have a little lightheartedness in the political scene, they're fine. This one, I think, however, no fault of theirs. This one, they're being used, and this one, I think, Stuart Phillip and others are in the First Nations society that saw that, know that, and made a difficult decision, but it was the right one.
Well, at least we had the Kitsilano Coast Guard base once again to show off to the Royals. And William is a search and rescue helicopter pilot. That's what he does for a living.
Yeah, well, these things, I don't, to me, it isn't as serious as a lot of people take it either way. All I'm saying is that I can understand if I were a First Nations chief, I'd be saying, wait a minute, this is an exercise in PR, and guess who's getting the PR? And guess who'll be there with his wife and little kids too, and all look like one great big happy family, and I'm telling you folks it isn't, and I'm not going to play the game. So, I understand that, but when it gets down just to coming for the visits that the Queen used to come on a lot of the time, or for a celebration of some national holiday, that sort of thing, I think if they're fine. They're a better part of life, and this, as I say, is an extremely attractive couple to have come, and that's no doubt why Trudeau, who obviously believes in good looks and flash as part of the political weapons, has got them coming out right now. I'm just a little surprised that they didn't see that, but I suppose if they saw that and said, well, they're not coming, then they'd have been in a hell of a lot of trouble for that. So I guess they were damned if they didn't, damned if they didn't. But I think your question is, do I think they're a good idea? I think a lot of the time they're an excellent idea. They do no harm. They get a lot of people's morale up and do a lot for business and so on. When they're used, however, as weapons in a fight that's going on, and you want the people that are most involved in the fight that's against the government, you want them to sort of go along with it, you're asking for trouble. And when you've got a strong, if I may say so, very intelligent leader like Stuart Phillips, he sees through that, and it works to your disadvantage, and you wind up with egg on your face, and I think that's what's happened to us.
Rafe, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure, Jim. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. My guest has been Rafe Mair, former BC Cabinet Minister and Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. You're listening to The Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on The Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.